Claire sat at the kitchen table, the morning light filtering softly through the curtains, but inside her chest, the cold was unbearable. The letter lay there in front of her, its words sharp and cruel, as if someone had carved them into her heart. Ethan had taken everything. Not just the house she had built memories in, but the trust she had placed in her own son. She replayed the moment in her mind, the day she had signed the papers. Ethan's smooth voice, his practiced smile, the way he'd assured her it was just some formal paperwork. She had never dreamed to question him, never imagined the betrayal that hid behind those eyes she once saw as innocent and full of love. Now, the truth was clear, and it felt like a blade twisting inside her. Tears blurred her vision as the weight of the deception crushed her, but beneath the grief, a flicker of something fierce stirred. Claire was not a woman to surrender easily. Her life had been a series of battles, losing her husband, raising Ethan alone, fighting for every scrap of happiness. She wiped her tears and reached for her phone. It was time to fight. Marcus answered on the second ring. His voice was calm and steady, a lifeline in the storm. Claire explained everything, how Ethan had manipulated her, how she had signed away the deed without knowing, and how the house was more than just bricks and mortar. It was the last piece of her past, the last connection to a life she feared slipping away. Marcus listened without interrupting. When she finished, he asked quietly, "Do you have any proof, Claire? Anything that shows the signature wasn't truly your consent?" Claire swallowed hard. She admitted she had no direct proof, but she still held something valuable: money. A settlement from an accident years ago, money she had kept hidden from Ethan. She had never told him, never wanted to taint their relationship with the shadow of money. But now it was her shield and her sword. That evening, Claire sat alone in her living room, clutching the worn photo of her late husband. Memories flooded her, his laughter, his steady presence beside her through all the hardships. She whispered into the silence, "I won't let this break me, not now." The next day she confronted Ethan. She found him at the cafe where he worked, the place she once thought would be his stepping stone, not the stage for his betrayal. When she walked in, he looked up, surprise flickering across his face before it hardened into something cold. Why, Ethan?" she asked, her voice trembling but strong. Why would you do this to me?" Ethan's eyes darted away. "You don't understand, Mom. I needed the money. You wouldn't help." Her heart shattered anew, but she held on to her resolve. "I never stopped loving you. But love isn't enough when trust is broken." As she left the cafe, Claire felt the weight of loneliness press down on her, but also the steady rise of determination. This was only the beginning. The fight to reclaim her home, and her dignity, had just begun. The fight for justice forged new beginnings. Claire sat stiffly in the courtroom, the sterile air heavy with tension. The polished wood panels reflected the solemn faces of everyone present, but none of that mattered as much as the weight in her chest, the determination to reclaim what had been stolen from her. Marcus, sitting beside her, had spent weeks preparing their case. Every document was meticulously gathered, every witness carefully briefed. Yet, none of that could erase the raw wound inflicted by Ethan's betrayal. Claire felt exposed, vulnerable, yet fiercely resolute. The room fell silent as the judge entered, his eyes briefly scanning the room before settling on Claire and Ethan. The trial began with Ethan's defense, his voice smooth but strained, trying to justify the fraudulent cession as a necessity, a desperate act born from hardship. But to Claire, his words sounded hollow, a painful echo of excuses. When it was Claire's turn, she stood, her hands trembling but her voice unwavering. She recounted the years of sacrifice, how she had raised Ethan alone, the nights spent worrying about his future, the silent prayers whispered for his happiness. She spoke of the house not as a property, but as a vessel of memories, a sanctuary of love and loss. Marcus presented the proof of the forged signature, the discrepancies that made clear Ethan had manipulated the situation. He also revealed Claire's settlement money, funds she had kept secret, not out of shame, but out of hope that love would suffice. The courtroom absorbed this revelation like a shockwave. Ethan's expression darkened, his facade cracking under the weight of truth. The judge listened carefully, weighing every word with impartial gravity. Claire felt her heart pounding, each second stretching into an eternity. But it wasn't just the legal battle that played out, it was the battle within Claire herself. She faced her son, once the center of her world, now a stranger cloaked in betrayal. There were moments when she wanted to scream, to break down, to let anger consume her. Yet she held on to something far stronger, her dignity. When the judge finally rendered his verdict, the room seemed to hold its breath. The court finds in favor of Claire Mitchell. The deed is hereby restored to her name. A wave of relief washed over Claire, tears springing to her eyes. Yet, beneath the joy was a quiet sorrow. The house she had fought so hard to regain was filled with memories too painful to return to. As the trial ended, Claire made a choice that surprised even Marcus. She would not go back to that house. Instead, she would use her settlement money to build something new, something that would honor the past but not be chained to it. The courtroom emptied, but Claire stayed a moment longer, whispering a farewell to the ghosts of her old life. She was ready to begin again, not just as a mother who had been wronged, but as a woman who would reclaim her future on her own terms. Claire stood outside the modest houses she had purchased, her fingers brushing the worn wood of the front door of the first one. The air smelled of fresh paint and blooming jasmine, mingling with the quiet hum of the small town she had returned to. It was a far cry from the imposing walls of the old family home she had lost and reclaimed but never wished to inhabit again. These houses were different. They weren't just structures, they were promises. Promises of safety, warmth, and dignity for women like her, older, vulnerable, often forgotten by the world. She had named the Refuge Haven House in honor of Michael, her late husband, whose gentle spirit had always encouraged her to protect and nurture those around her. Inside, the rooms were modest but welcoming, each one thoughtfully arranged with soft blankets, simple furniture, and little touches that spoke of care, flowers on the windowsills, framed photographs of places that whispered hope and peace. Claire had spent months transforming these spaces, turning pain into purpose. The first woman arrived shyly, her hands trembling as she stepped through the door. Claire greeted her with a warm smile, seeing in her eyes the same fear and loneliness she had once known. She wrapped a shawl around the woman's shoulders, her own heart swelling with a mix of sorrow and determination. Days turned into weeks, and Haven House began to breathe life. Stories unfolded within its walls, tales of loss, resilience, and quiet victories. Claire listened, comforted, and sometimes wept with those who found refuge there. Each story reminded her why she had fought so fiercely, not for a house, but for a home where love could be given and received, without betrayal or pain. 1 year later, Claire stood by the window of the refuge, watching the sun set in a blaze of amber and gold. The grief that had once consumed her had softened into acceptance. She no longer clung to the hope that Ethan would change. Instead, she embraced the truth that strength came from rebuilding, from creating something good from the ashes of the past. Her phone buzzed softly. A message from Marcus, her loyal friend and ally. "Proud of you, Claire. You've created more than a home, you've created a future." She smiled, feeling a peace she had never thought possible. In the quiet of the evening, surrounded by women who had found sanctuary, Claire whispered a silent thanks to Michael, to her own courage, and to the unyielding spirit that had carried her through. Love, she finally understood, was not always enough to save others, but it was more than enough to heal oneself and build new beginnings. Claire's journey is a testament to the strength that rises from heartbreak and betrayal. When love alone is not enough to protect us, the true power lies in our courage to rebuild and to create hope, not just for ourselves, but for others who need a safe place to call home. If you've been touched by Claire's story, remember that every act of kindness, every effort to support those who are vulnerable makes a difference. Together we can build communities where compassion triumphs over hardship. Join us. Stand up for those who have been forgotten. Help create safe havens where dignity and love can flourish. Because a new beginning is possible, and it starts with you.